Hope you guys are all well and doing okay in this freezing cold, but at least the sun's out today, so that's a start. Okay, so we're going to continue from doing what we were doing last lesson. So we're going to talk about meanders and oxbow lakes, and then I'm going to set you an activity to get on with on those things. So it'll be doing some diagrams and annotating those. So that's all we'll be getting on with today because it is the last lesson of the week before half term. So I'm sure you'll all be as pleased as I am to have a week off. I'm not going to set you any extra work over half term. It's just a matter of making sure that you guys are completing all assignments that have been set for you. So making sure you're all up to date with all previous assignments because I know not everyone is. And of course, making sure that you're starting to upload any work to the student upload area, which is on the files tab. So once I've got all of that in, then I'll be able to do reports and things like that for you guys, so I can show that you've been doing a lot of work. Just give me a second, just letting people in. Okay, so it is continuing on from last time, so we're going to get started. So we're looking at meanders and oxbow lakes, which is, of course, the processes that happen, the things that go on when a river bends. So it's all about the middle course of the river. So if you remember, a meander is literally just where the river turns around. And it's created by the fact that the river always takes the route through easier rock to erode. And if there's been any sort of disturbance, like a plant growing, some harder rocks or anything like that, the river will start to bend and turn around it due to those erosional processes, which is the power of the water, hydraulic action, and the scraping of the rocks and things that it's carrying, which is called abrasion. So meanders are formed because of this lateral erosion. So they start in the middle course, they start to erode side to side rather than just digging down into the ground. So we did this last time and we looked at what the differences are between the inside and the outside of a meander. And it's all to do with the fact that the fastest water of a river goes around the outside of the bend. So the fastest water always bounces to the outside bend of a river. Just like I said, if you were sat in a car and it went around a corner quickly, you'd be flung to the outside. And the same thing's happening with the water. So it's bouncing around and it's doing more erosion on the outside of the bend. That makes it dig down, it erodes the rock like it would in a waterfall, and makes that meander slowly move. On the inside of the bend, the meander's going a lot slower. There's a lot more friction where it's rubbing against the sides. So it is depositing more things. And that's why we start to get these little slip-off slopes, these sandy beds on the side of a meander. So I think we did this last time. This was the last thing I got you guys to do, wasn't it? Did everyone manage to complete this, your diagrams? Yeah? No? Yeah, brilliant. I think you guys should have all had a go at doing that. If you didn't finish it, what I'm going to do is I'll pop the image in chat, and that's something you can be getting on with a little bit later on at the end of this lesson. Because these diagrams are a skill that we need to have in geography, and you'll often be asked about them in exams. So for this diagram, what we should have had was the river cliff was on the outside of the bend. The slip-off slope is this part on the inside of the bend. Fastest flow was on the outside, so that's where it was moving faster. And the slowest flow, so the slowest water, was on the inside bit. We get more deposition because of that fast water on more erosion, because of that fast water on the outside of the bend. And we get more deposition because it's slower on the inside of the bend. It's a lot shallower on the inside, and it's a lot deeper on the outside. So more erosion on the outside with faster water leads to a wider and deeper part of the river. More deposition on the inside with slower water means we've got this slope where it's a lot shallower and a lot narrower. And these rivers change over time. So if you didn't quite finish that at the end of last lesson, which you should have because you had a bit of time at the end, make sure you've got that done by the time we have our next lesson after half term. So you might need to come back to it and have a look. So don't forget, I am recording the meeting. So if you ever need to check back on anything, take a screenshot or whatever it is you need to do, feel free to do that. Usually I put the images in chat for you. So what we need to look at now are when a meander bends so much that it actually joins together and the river takes a shortcut through it. So you can see these Oxbow lakes on the picture on the board. They're these kind of like bits of water that are separate to the actual river. So they've been cut off from where the river's going. As you can see here in the meander, right in the middle of the picture, there's only a tiny bit of land between those two parts of the river, and eventually the river's going to move and cut through that little bit of land and reach the other side. So rivers are always trying to take the easiest and shortest routes, and it eventually cuts off parts of itself. So this is a classic thing in geography. It always comes up, and it's a labeled diagram of an Oxbow lake. So we usually do it in 3 or 4 different parts. 1, we get a meander. 2, we show where the erosion and deposition has been happening and the meander gets even more bendy. And 3, eventually that will bend so much that the river will go in a more of a straight line, a shorter route, and cut off the old meander. And that old bit that's left there is called an oxbow lake, because it's a lake that is in the shape of an oxbow. And an oxbow is those things that they used to put around bulls and oxes and sort of animals to pull plows in fields. They're like a horseshoe shape. So we'll talk about how it works. So an oxbow lake always starts off as part of the river. It always starts off as a meander, just like this one you can see in the picture. This is quite a big one and it's really loopy, so it's eventually going to turn into this oxbow lake. So the first step is all to do with the erosion. So the meander is formed naturally, as we know, but it gets bigger over time. It gets more bendy over time because of the erosion that's going on the outside of the riverbank. So erosion takes place here on the outside because the water is moving fastest. The flow is at its fastest, and it's called lateral erosion when that happens. So in the diagram on the screen, you can see we've got a meander going around, and there's a blue line going through it, which shows where the fastest water is. And that always kind of swings out to the outside bend. So it starts to wear away and make these even more loopy. So the next step is the neck of the meander, which is this bit of land in between the two parts of the river. So the neck of the meander gradually gets narrower and narrower, so it gets smaller as more lateral erosion takes place. So this becomes very, very narrow and is only separated by a small piece of land. So we call that the neck of the meander. So over time, this neck is getting narrower and narrower. So then the next step is that we need a river to flood. And rivers do always flood eventually when there's too much rain. So when a river floods, it allows that bit of water to break through the neck. So the neck finally disappears and gets eroded away. So here we can see in the diagram, the water is now taking the more straighter route. So it's flooded and it's got rid of that bit of land in the middle. It's left behind this kind of island and the loop of the meander going around it, but it's not actually flowing that way anymore. It's taken the shortcut. And then final step of this is the river now starts to take the easiest route. So it travels along this new channel, like I mentioned, and it starts to deposit bits of mud and sand and rocks on the outside here where it used to flow through. So it cuts off that bit of water, the old meander, completely, and that little bit of water that's left behind is called an Oxbow lake. Over time, all the water will dry out from there, and it will just be left behind with a little ditch that we call a scar. So it's usually called an Oxbow lake or a meander scar. So this is the meander scar that you can see that's got left behind. So in some circumstances, Oxbow lakes dry up and they leave behind what's called this meander scar. So in that little satellite image, you can see them on there. So I'll just run through that again quickly, because it can seem quite complicated, but it's actually a really simple thing that we've got going on there. So meander goes around and it starts to move because of the fast water on the outside of the bend and making more erosion happen. The meander gets narrower, it becomes loopy, getting this neck of the meander smaller and smaller because of all of the lateral erosion. Over time it will flood and the water will cut through that neck and take the shorter route. An Oxbow lake gets left behind after stuff has been deposited, blocking it off. And then it can dry up and leave behind a scar. So this is all to do with deposition happening on the inside of meander and erosion happening on the outside, moving those loops a little over time. So it's a process of both erosion and deposition. So it's not just one. So you must remember that the meander neck is only ever broken through once the river floods. So what I've done is I've got a little bit of independent work for you guys to do. And this is basically what I want you to get on with for the rest of the lesson. So for the last half an hour, basically, that you guys have got now. And what it is I've just set it on assignments. It's a video, so you need to watch the video. It's about 9 minutes long, the bit that you need to watch. Oops. Then you've got the diagrams there showing what's going on with the meanders. So I need you to copy them down. So the top one's the first step, the bottom one is the last step. Add some labels on them. You can use these key terms. And write yourself a description. So you will have to watch the video first of all and watch till about the 10-minute point. Then draw the diagrams, label them, and then write your own description. When you have finished that, what I'd like you to do is photograph it if you can, and upload it to the student upload area or onto the assignment, please, that I've set for you. So do you reckon you guys can be getting on with that for the last half an hour of today's lesson? And then once you finish that, make sure you're caught up on all previous assignments and start using this time to upload some actual work to the student upload area, because I haven't really given you a lot of time to do that so far. So do you reckon you guys could do that for me today, please? So I've got some work to look at over half term. Yeah, I will pop the PowerPoint into the chat now. Yep, of course. Mara, why don't you think you can do that? Okay, and if you are happy to do that, please find the assignment in your assignments. Complete that first. Do any previous assignments as well. Make sure all those quizzes and things that I've set you are done. And then start to photograph and use the rest of your time to upload the work. Okay, so everything's been set for you. So if you're happy to do that, you're free to log off the meeting. The meeting recording will show up after